Before there was a switch on every wall, the house itself did the work. It kept your food cold, pulled its own water and cooled its own rooms, all without a single wire running to it. For thousands of years, houses were built with rooms and features we have almost completely forgotten. Then electricity arrived in the 1930s, and one by one we tore them all out. This is the record of 16 of them. The smart old features that grandparents took for granted, each one a quiet piece of engineering we would give a lot to have back today. Number 1, the root cellar. A room dug down into the ground under the house, where a whole harvest of potatoes, carrots, and apples could keep fresh all winter long with no ice and no power at all. It worked because of a simple fact about the earth. Dig down 10 feet almost anywhere in the world, and the ground holds a steady 50 to 60 degrees, no matter how hot or cold the day is up above. A good one held near freezing, kept damp, with an air vent low and another up high so the room could breathe. A cellar just 5 by 8 feet could store 30 bushels of food, enough to carry a family clean through to spring. There was a real craft to using one. Apples had to be kept away from the potatoes or they would sprout, and the old saying held true, one rotten apple really would spoil the whole barrel, so you culled the bad ones every week. Number 2, the spring house. A little stone hut built right over a running spring, with the cold water led through a stone trough along the floor. Milk and butter sat in that flowing water and stayed at refrigerator temperature, somewhere in the low 50s, right through the hottest summer. It was a working fridge that never once needed to be plugged in. Every farm with a cold spring built one. The milk came down twice a day and sat right in the running water. And because the little house was made of stone and banked into the hill, it stayed cool through every season of the year. Number 3, the ice box. Before the electric fridge, this was how a town kept cool. A wooden cabinet lined with tin, holding a great block of ice up top that chilled the food stored down below. The ice came by wagon, cut from frozen lakes in winter and packed in sawdust, which slowed the melting by half. A card in the window told the iceman how much you wanted that day: 25, 50, 75, or 100 pounds. The ice box ruled the American kitchen for nearly a century. Then the electric fridge came for it. Only 8 homes in 100 owned one at the start of the 1930s, but 44 in 100 did by the end of the decade. Number 4, the cold pantry, or larder. Old farmhouses always put their storeroom on the north or east corner of the house, the coldest side, the one that never catches the direct sun. Thick walls and a heavy stone floor held the cool, and there was always a door shutting the whole room off from the heated part of the house. It stayed cold and steady, and it never changed its temperature quickly. Whole farmhouses were designed around this one idea. The old northern farmhouses were built facing due south for the sun, with the hallway and the cold storerooms lined up along the north wall to stand as a shield against the winter wind. Number 5, the pie safe. A simple cupboard with door panels of tin, punched full of little holes in pretty patterns of stars and eagles, though the holes were never really about looks. The holes let air move through, so bread and pies stayed cool and free of mold, while keeping the flies, the dust, and the hungry children safely on the outside. Clever and quiet and completely gone today. Number 6, the milk door. A tiny insulated cupboard built right into the outside wall, with one little door to the street and another opening into the kitchen inside. Home milk delivery goes back to 1785, and the milkman slipped fresh bottles into that box before dawn without ever waking the house. It kept the milk out of the sun and off the porch where it could be taken. Keeping food cold was only half of what the old house had to do. The other half was surviving the summer itself, because there was no air conditioning anywhere, and the building was expected to cool its own rooms, all on its own. Number 7, the sleeping porch. Long before air conditioning, families beat the summer heat by moving the beds outside onto a screened porch off the upstairs bedroom, open to whatever cool night breeze there was. Doctors of the day swore fresh night air was good for the lungs, so the sleeping porch was healthy and cool at the same time. On a stifling night, it was the most comfortable bed in the whole house. Number 8, transom windows. Those little hinged windows set above the doors were not just for show propped open. They let warm air drift from room to room, even with the door shut for privacy. Warm air rises, so it slipped out through the transoms while cooler air came in below. A house quietly ventilating itself. They were everywhere from the early 1800s until air conditioning arrived in the 1970s. Number 9. Thick walls. Old adobe and stone homes were built with walls 1.5 feet thick or more, and that heavy mass did something a thin modern wall simply cannot. The wall soaked up the sun's heat slowly through the day, then let it back out through the cold night, holding the rooms even and steady the whole time. Some adobe homes built this way have stood for over 700 years. But here's the honest part. It was never the stone by itself. A plain stone wall is a poor insulator, which is why a castle is such a famously chilly place to live. The trick was mass paired with the steady earth behind it. Number 10. Real working shutters. Not the plastic decorations bolted beside windows today, but solid panels that actually closed, open by day to warm the room, shut tight at night to hold that heat from leaking out through the glass. Beating the summer heat was one battle. Holding on to warmth through a long, hard winter was the other, and the old house fought that one with iron, brick, and stone, never with a dial on the wall or a furnace humming in the basement. Number 11. The cast iron range. This one heavy iron stove was the beating heart of the old home. It did 3 jobs at once that today take 3 separate machines. It cooked the food, it heated the house, and a tank on its side gave you hot water on tap, cold in at the bottom, hot piped out the top. And being solid iron, it kept radiating warmth for hours after the fire burned to coals. The very first of these iron stoves goes back to Benjamin Franklin, who built one in 1742 to squeeze more warmth from a wasteful open fire. The finest were cut from soapstone, which drank in heat and gave it back for hours. Number 12. The central chimney. The oldest houses ran their chimney straight up the middle of the home instead of out on an end wall, and that placement was no accident. A chimney in the middle soaked up the fire's heat and radiated it back into the rooms all around, instead of throwing it away outside. That mattered, because an open fireplace loses 80 to 90% of its heat straight up the flue. Number 13. The cistern. Instead of paying for water, the old house simply caught its own. Gutters carried the rain off the roof and down into a big sealed tank waiting below. 1,000 feet of ordinary roof catches about 50 gallons of water a day from a steady rain, enough to run a household. A full cistern held 5 or 6 tons of water, which is why it was built as solid as the house itself. Number 14. The summer kitchen. Farm families often built a whole second kitchen in a separate little building and moved all their cooking out there once the hot weather came. The wood cookstove threw off a brutal heat, so keeping it and the smoke and the fire risk out of the main house kept the living rooms cool all summer. They were everywhere from the 1850s right up to the 1930s. And it was not just for cooking supper. All the hot, heavy work of the harvest happened out there too, the canning, the pickling, and the butchering. So the steam, the smells, and the mess stayed well clear of the main house. Number 15. The root clamp. When there were too many potatoes for the cellar, you stored them right out in the open field, piled in a steep heap, covered thick with straw, and sealed over with earth. The earth was piled 5 or 6 inches thick and beaten flat, with wisps of straw poking out every couple of yards as chimneys, so the pile could breathe without freezing. In the open, the crop stayed healthier than in any cellar. It was not foolproof. A clamp gave no protection against a truly hard frost, and its great enemy was rats. Burrow in and nest, and you could lose the whole pile at once. But get it right, and it beat any closed cellar. Number 16. The earth-sheltered room. Some old homes were dug right into a hillside, banking earth up around the walls to borrow the ground's steady warmth. Because the earth around it stays close to 55 degrees all year, a house built into the ground barely needed any fuel to keep it comfortable. The dirt itself did half the heating and half the cooling, for free, every single day. None of these features needed a battery or a bill. The old house cooled itself, fed itself, and watered itself, running on nothing but sunlight, running water, and the steady temperature of the earth it stood on. We did not lose these features because they stopped working. We lost them because the power came on and we stopped needing to be clever. But every one of them is still there in the record, waiting. That's one more page from the almanac. Subscribe, there is a lot that we forgot, and one by one I'm writing it all back down.